All right. Welcome, everyone, to another Web3 Crypto Startups virtual event. Web3 Crypto Startups is a 1,700-member community where crypto's most audacious builders meet. Today, we're excited to welcome Andrew Milich, the CEO and co-founder of Skiff. Andrew grew up in New York City and graduated from Stanford University as the Henry Ford II Scholar. After spending years programming in security and autonomous vehicles and spending time around the world, Andrew founded Skiff. Skiff's email and collaboration products are an end-to-end encrypted version of a collaborative workspace, enabling people around the world to communicate and collaborate more freely and effectively. Skiff has raised capital from notable investors such as Sequoia Capital, Balaji Srinivasan, Gabby Goldberg, and the Ethereum Foundation. You can find Andrew on LinkedIn and on Twitter at MilichAB. That's MILICHAB. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. And it's been great to get to know you, Greg, and the community.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to have you and really excited for this conversation today. And so to start us off, I'm excited to get into Skiff and the products you're building. But first, I thought it'd be fun to start off with your assessment of the current tech landscape from a privacy and security perspective. And I think most crypto and Web3 people kind of know, if not all social media users, they know and are aware of how big tech is using their data for things like ad targeting. But what about services like Gmail or iMessage or AWS? What is kind of going on from a privacy, a security perspective with those types of services?
Yeah, these are great questions. So I guess maybe I'll tackle it from first in the current landscape, just startups, what are all the new things going on? And then also just on the big tech side, like you mentioned, how are things changing? So I think on the startup side, it's a really interesting time. We're seeing a whole ecosystem of privacy first products, not just be launched, but also I think reach significant scale and adoption. So, private search, private messaging, private browsers, private email platforms, private communication apps, private cryptocurrencies. You basically see this whole parallel ecosystem of products that people use to communicate, to collaborate, to send money, etc. And so I think all those categories I mentioned have products and companies that have reached tens to hundreds of millions of users, if not, tens to hundreds of millions every day. And then also just companies that are profitable, reaching significant scale and just starting to get past what I think 5 to 10 years ago was just a really much smaller user group. So I think what's interesting is now, I guess, plug that into what's going on with big tech, and it might explain why you're seeing these startups succeed, which is you're seeing, Apple, Google, Samsung, large companies actually start to market their products on privacy. And so in a world where consumers have expectations that all products are really good, Android is in its nth version, the iPhone is reaching, hundreds of millions of people, if not more. Now, privacy has become, I think, one of the last few differentiators or just key kind of sales points that Apple has really invested significantly into, that we see Samsung investing a lot into right now. And I think we'll start to see, other big tech companies also work hard to kind of recapture or reposition their brand. So it's interesting, Google, I think, has struggled in this dimension for a long time because of how their search business model works. But, you see them and Android actually trying to position themselves in a really kind of strong privacy first way. So I guess these two things are happening. One is this entire startup ecosystem is being built. And at the same time, big tech is trying to reorient themselves, possibly noticing that consumers are now adopting privacy products en masse.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. You see, well, I guess it might be worth it to maybe pause on some of these other services that are succeeding from a privacy perspective. And I think some people are probably familiar with the company Brave, which is a private web browser that interacts with IPFS instead of AWS or another centralized database, which I'm definitely excited to get into and talk about how Skiff is using it. But why do you think some of these products are succeeding today? Is it a change in consumer consciousness? Is it a change in something else?
Yeah, I think, and that's a great example. I think, Brave and private browsers are one category, and they're reaching really significant scale. I'd also say it's true with Signal Messenger. That product has over 100 million monthly active users. I think very few products in the world can claim to be at that scale. And also with, private email services, with, I don't know, just I think we're seeing it in a lot of different dimensions. In terms of why, I have a few ideas and thoughts. I think one is that, this group is, I think, larger than what big tech or other people traditionally anticipated, and they're not always super vocal. But it can be really, really rewarding and helpful to be the kind of clear voice, establishing your brand as pro privacy in the world when very few companies have been there for the last 10 years. I think my other two things to note are, one, it's been a bit of a winding path and slow burning field for a while. Brave has been around for 5, 6, 7 years. Same with a lot of the other privacy first products that we look at. That's generally, I think, quite true in the consumer space too, where it just takes 5 to 10 years to reach significant adoption. And finally, what I'm excited about, I guess like small drum roll, is that I think the privacy and crypto intersection is also facilitating that in a really big way. And so to answer that second part of your question, what I think is super cool is that basically we're seeing those value aligned crypto people also become really good users for privacy, and just really value aligned privacy software make a lot of sense to integrate or work with or be expand to crypto. And what I mean by that is, I think a lot of the way we look at privacy is, like there are all sorts of definitions from the law to Steve Jobs to others, but a huge part of it is data ownership. And I think data ownership is one of the key core concepts of crypto. How does a crypto wallet work? It's like you own your own keys, so you own your own data, so you own your own tokens and everything. How does basically transactions work? It's basically verifying that you signed something with a private key. And I think a lot of those technical concepts like private keys, and also just like intuitive ones like data ownership, make a lot of sense to crypto people. So I think that's a really exciting cross collaboration, that we're seeing right now. And I think is working really, really well for, Brave, for us, and hopefully like an entire new generation. But we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, that's awesome, and it's such a great point because there have been privacy movements obviously before crypto, but now with crypto, it's almost like there's this, and I don't know, from a like sheer numbers of people perspective, like I didn't know Signal had 100 million users. That's a pretty astounding fact. But with crypto, it's almost like adding kind of fuel on the fire, because now you have these users who understand what cryptography is and things like private
Totally.
keys, and are starting to, some of this like verbiage is starting to be commonplace within crypto circles, which is really fascinating.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd love to hear more of your perspective if you've seen that in other ways too, where you've seen really cool kind of privacy crypto coins or projects. I think that's been awesome. Like that's a whole massive thriving domain inside crypto. And also I agree, like the concepts being really shared is super helpful, because it means that, crypto people are constantly experiencing like pseudo anonymity. Like basically so many crypto projects and founders are already really trying to do whatever they can to protect their privacy. And from there, it's also just like a status symbol. You're hiding your identity with some sort of asset or, an image that you own or something like that. And beyond that, I think also a lot of the technical concepts are the same, like signing a transaction, private keys, all that stuff. So yeah, I think that's really cool.
So when did you get started in the world of privacy and security, and have these concepts always been fascinating to you? And I know you previously worked in autonomous vehicles, and maybe you were working on some security problems or solutions for them. But where did your journey in privacy kind of begin?
Yeah, it's an interesting path. I think for me, I like the human safety aspect a lot. So it's just really cool doing engineering that's really challenging and difficult. I think for me, like autonomous vehicles are a huge part of that. You have to test so thoroughly and make sure, things are going to work at the last minute in every circumstance. And I think in many ways, privacy, and I'm also going to say crypto, feel really similar too. And this is maybe a sore point for people who are listening, or for you, or for the world. But you can imagine, like when you deploy, a smart contract or something, it's almost like deploying this like autonomous vehicle, and then all of a sudden people's funds and livelihoods are basically entrusted to it, And you have to have tested really thoroughly, thought really thoroughly, and been super careful about how you're doing all the engineering there. So I was really, really excited about that for my whole life. Started working on the AV side for a while. Then I think in just a little more college pursuits, got more into security and also into crypto. And so, through a hackathon I helped run, through roommates I had, and actually Skiff's co-founder, Jason, and I met planning Stanford's hackathon many years ago. Cool. But we started to kind of gravitate towards that as one of these other really cool, really intense kind of engineering areas. So that's what I get really excited about. Like, how can you deploy something into the world and have such a deep, thorough engineering understanding? But it's changed so much. And I think obviously Skiff is so consumer focused. And so now it's just a lot more about building a really, really good product.
That's one of the things you said. It's a really interesting point about smart contracts, the analogy between smart contracts and autonomous vehicles, where both of which, when you deploy in the world, they're these unchangeable, kind of immutable things, and you have to be extremely sure that they're secure, work as intended. You've run all the diagnostics before putting them out in the world, and people start to use them, because at that point it's sort of out of your hands, and they take on a life of their own.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great analogy. I don't know. What about you? I feel like you see so many teams getting into this type of engineering all the time. Where do you see people coming from?
All over. I mean, that's one of the crazy things about the crypto industry, right? You get people who, have traditional backgrounds, maybe went to college, maybe studied computer programming. You have people from backgrounds where they dropped out of high school and, got into, crypto by themselves over the years, maybe taught themselves how to code or program.
Yeah.
And then now are sort of building really interesting things. So that's it's this big melting pot. It's like the melting pot of people from all backgrounds. It's this frontier technology that has brought in so many different people from, governance and civil engineering perspectives, from development perspectives, from philosophical perspectives. And so, yeah, it's this new frontier of thought and tech. It's hard to describe almost.
Yeah, it's the Wild West, I guess, in certain ways.
That is certainly true. Well, cool. So I would love to get into Skiff and hear a little more about what you're building. And take it away.
Yeah,
would love to dive in.
Be my pleasure. So I've got a few slides, but I think I'll just talk through them to start, and then we can go through a sign-up demo.
That'd be great.
So yeah, I think you gave a quick intro, but Skiff is a privacy-first, end-to-end encrypted, wallet-native workspace. So in a world where we care about privacy and data ownership, Skiff is a complete way to work together, to communicate, and to collaborate, where you own your own data, where you can work together totally privately, anonymously, and never worry about who, where, and kind of how your data is being used. So today we've launched 3 products and have a lot to support at the same time. We've got Skiff Mail, which is end-to-end encrypted private email. We have Skiff Drive, which is file sharing, file storage, and integrated with IPFS if you'd like to store your end-to-end encrypted files in a decentralized way.
And what is IPFS? Maybe if we can take a little sidebar.
So
how does it differ from a centralized cloud hosting database?
So IPFS is one of the first projects that got me really excited 5 or 6 years ago about, I think, privacy and crypto and data storage. Basically, it's this entirely kind of turning inside out of the way data storage works on the cloud, which is traditionally you upload a file and it sits on an Amazon, a Google, another server, Microsoft, in some database or in some just blob storage or something, where you just upload it and it goes to some data center and then they figure out how to control it. With IPFS, the entire model is reinvented, where there's basically a network of nodes, just like nodes running kind of any sort of other blockchain, that are negotiating and planning how to split files up into a certain number of pieces and how to distribute them across the network. So you basically get total reliability, long-term storage, and then kind of negotiated fees that reward these node owners for storing people's data, depending on how popular and frequently accessible you want that data to be. So it's kind of reinventing the entire cloud storage model from the ground up. And for certain use cases, I think it's amazing, but it's also a complete reinvention of how people traditionally think about data storage. So for example, if you have your life's work and you're thinking, oh, I need some way of, putting that into the web in a censorship resistant, distributed around the world way where anyone can access it through local nodes, this is pretty much the best way of doing that. If you're like, oh, I just want to store a copy of my file online and I don't really care how it's stored, a cloud server might still just do the trick. But it's really awesome. And we're seeing IPFS get adopted into web browsers like Brave, into Chrome extensions for people to upload, download, and access data, and then into more and more consumer products like Skiff. So yeah, I actually, if it works for you, Greg, I'll just screen share a little video I recorded of signing up for Skiff, running through our products, and then also enabling IPFS storage.
That sounds great.
Cool.
Yeah, and IPFS, so it's this interesting decentralized storage network and there's a lot of kind of parallels between like maybe a proof of work or proof of stake system and IPFS, which is decentralized storage, where it's this distributed network of people running nodes, and instead of doing some like proof of work kind of algorithm, they're essentially like providing storage for files that maybe have gotten split up, and then are kind of decentralized in terms of where that data is actually hosted.
Totally. And yeah, I mean, that's a great way of putting it. I think I'm not giving, maybe we're both not giving enough algorithmic credit to years of development and complexity that went into making sure the network is really reliable, that there's redundancy, and all the incentives work out.
Yeah, I'm sure we're not. But hopefully there's some basic understanding that's being shared.
I don't know if I can share a link too, but I've got a great article that we worked with a reporter at Fast Company on. I'll put it in this chat, Greg. I don't know if that goes to everyone, but basically on how Skiff and IPFS collaborated together.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Is this working reasonably well? It looks like it is.
Yeah, it's working
cool.
well.
So yeah, you can see this is just our traditional sign-up flow that's not using a wallet. But if people go to skiff.com right now and then click sign up, and you're in a browser or a tab that has a wallet enabled, you can also use, I think, 3 or 4 different wallet options: MetaMask, Brave Wallet, Phantom, Unstoppable Domains, and some other stuff. So we're going to walk through our Pages product first, which is just real-time collaboration, notes, and then also with the drive built in. And then from there, we'll just walk through Skiff Mail and show you a little about what that looks like. But yeah, I think generally we try and just make Skiff really simple, intuitive, and easy to use, and also just kind of going towards the future of where we see workspaces, collaboration going. And so right now I just enabled IPFS storage for this account. And that means that all the static content, so I upload a file to Skiff Drive, or I drag and drop files into my documents, etc., those will get stored in IPFS. And you'll get a little like content identifier telling you where that file is in this decentralized network. And now we're inside the Skiff Mail inbox. Hopefully it's a pretty intuitive view. But we've just tried to build a lot of just quality of life features around making a really good mail product. And then also something that has these kind of new ways of collaborating and communicating. If you use a wallet, or you want to receive mail at an ENS name, or connect to a Unstoppable Domain. And that's the full demo, and I can always screen share more.
That's awesome. And I think it looks and feels pretty familiar, right? If you're familiar with, sending emails, which I think most of us are at this point, for better, for worse. It looks and feels pretty intuitive and pretty familiar. So really, like, the benefit, if I'm, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but really that benefit is like end-to-end encryption, privacy forward, and being able to integrate things like IPFS rather than having everything sit on some centralized database. Is that right? And is that kind of how you've thought about building the product?
So I guess let me rephrase slightly in the way we're thinking about it.
Yeah, please do.
I would say the core basic promise of what we need to do is just build a product that nails all the critical things that people need to do in the way they work. You could think about email and collaboration and Drive. People could use those products for hours every single day. And so kind of the first most important mission is just building products that are extremely good and reliable and performant and easy to use. From there, I think that's when it becomes interesting. Like a consumer is considering a new option for email, for Drive, for collaboration. That's where we want to be the most private and the most forward-looking of all the things that are out there today. And so I think, like you said, the privacy is built into the platform in a really fundamental way. You'll see like a couple of these lock badges on the right. You see kind of a lot of messaging and text around, communicating freely and private email and all that stuff to make sure people understand why Skiff is different. But I think that's how, you basically position Skiff against all the traditional incumbents. So with someone choosing a new email product or millions of people choosing new email products every day, we want to be the most private and then, Web3 integrated one out there.
How do you view some end-to-end encrypted communication channels that have come before? So to raise something like a Proton Mail, which does kind of end-to-end encryption via their email service. Are they competitive with you? Are they doing different things? How do you view, I guess, yourself in the landscape of this broader kind of private communication and really just communication at this point? Network?
That's a great question. So I would say in the traditional world of private communication, other private email providers or even, private messaging, I think I would say in some ways, yes, to the competitiveness question, and also in more ways, no. And yes, meaning that people only communicate, in a certain number of ways every day. And so you're always basically thinking about, are people going to use your product or another product? But I think more generally, we've made a lot of really orthogonal design and company decisions that, hopefully guide us towards a really exciting future, but we'll see if people adopt those in mass. And so what I mean by that is, I think we've made a lot of choices around our encryption algorithms. We don't support PGP out of the box, largely because it's like a 30-year-old protocol that has been written up so many times, is, fundamentally flawed and just really out of date in terms of how people are doing secure email. But that was one design decision that's just orthogonal to the way secure email has existed in the past. All the stuff around Web3 and wallets and decentralized storage is as well. And I think we're basically looking at what things might look like in 5 years and betting on people understanding the concept of data ownership and all these Web3 possibilities and, crypto wallets being inside every browser, et cetera, where we'd hope that those design decisions that we've made around security and privacy and end-to-end encryption are where the future is going. But I think it's going to be really interesting because I think we'll see these products reach far more broad consumer bases. So I think the Signal user of 8 years ago is not going to be the Signal user 5 years from now. Mm-hmm. You might just be a normal kind of consumer who has 3 messaging apps and realizes that, you shouldn't be sending plain text messages on Facebook Messenger. So I think that's changing a lot. I think we're seeing, we'll see whether our kind of orthogonal choices pay off. And then, I don't know. That's most of my thoughts. What about you? What do you think?
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, just anecdotally, now we're all omni-channel, right? Like me personally, I have a WhatsApp, a Telegram, a Signal, iMessage. It's like there are all these different communication channels. But I would say that more and more communication, it just anecdotally is happening on Signal in terms of now my family group chat is on Signal. There are a couple like San Francisco crypto group chats that are on Signal. And so it is funny when the switching costs are low, it's like, there's sort of no downside to migrating to a more secure system.
Yeah, I agree. And I think where Signal has been leading the charge, but now everyone is investing, is just on the usability and ease of use and downloading and communicating. And so making, if you look at Signal's website, I'm pretty sure their entire tagline is speak freely. It's not anything negative about controlling what you say or you share. It's basically trying to make it super simple for the normal consumer or normal user who I think is starting to see conversations in the world about privacy. And so this week, there's been a massive scandal because a woman was charged with a felony because her Facebook Messenger messages were sent to law enforcement by Facebook. And so you see just these kind of, flashpoints where people start to migrate en masse. I'll say the other recent one is an Elon tweet in, I think, January of 2021, where he basically tweeted use Signal around this whole question about WhatsApp, Signal, Telegram. And so that, there's every 18 months or so, maybe some sort of migration.
Who is that target customer, say specifically for Skiff? So like, I work at a venture fund called Blumberg Capital. We use Gmail, and that houses essentially all of our business communication. And are we, I'm trying to think of how I want to ask the question. The point is that, it's worked fine so far is kind of the point, right? And so are we a customer that would want to use Skiff? And maybe like to ask a second order question is, what's happening with our Gmail communication today? And what are the risks that we would run that wouldn't be around if we use Skiff? So I don't know if that overarching question kind of makes sense, but it's sort of just like, why does end-to-end encryption matter? Why do these things matter for the everyday user, or is there a different kind of target demographic that you're going after?
Yeah.
So that's like a super, sorry, and to add more context, to over contextualize, it's a super basic question. If you're a complete novice in privacy and security, which I am, I would say, why does it matter?
Yeah, I would, I guess, answer in two parts. The first part being, who are Skiff users today, or generally, what do we think about them? And then the second part, which is about you in particular. So I think on the first part, and I'll maybe just stop sharing my screen. So I think on that first part on, where do we generally find people attracted to Skiff? It's generally people who already have some familiarity with a product like Signal, and then also people who are kind of much more deep in the crypto ecosystem. So I'd say those, Signal monthly active user and like a MetaMask monthly active user are really good Skiff users. And then, to answer your question on your own work, personal life, etc., I would basically, propose a decision tree where you're looking for workspace software for your company. So you've got Google Workspace, you've got some sort of Outlook setup, and hopefully we want Skiff to be competing front and center with all those other options. And then basically be built on this foundation of privacy and trust and owning your own data. And so I think in our world, like, we can promise you that because we have no access to your data, you never even have to think about how, where, when that data is being used. You're working with people abroad, you're dealing with complex, diligence, compliance, like, federal government related questions around investments you're doing in other countries or docs you're receiving, all this stuff. You basically just have much stronger controls over an understanding of how that data is being used. So I'd say generally, the first priority is just competing head to head with all these other workspace products, being something that's really good and really easy to use, and then delivering that peace of mind in the confidence of how Skiff is protecting your data that in a way that other products aren't. I don't know. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so it makes sense to me. And I think it makes sense because if we're in a world where we have to choose some sort of defaults, it would make sense that you would want to choose the most secure and then encrypted default in terms of everything you do. Is if it's an option that is, same cost, kind of same manual lift from the end user perspective, there's no reason why you wouldn't choose the service that's more privacy forward and more willing to protect your communication, your, personal life, than some other service. So I think from that perspective, it makes sense thinking about those sort of defaults.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of how we think about strategy. So, eventually we'll be a workspace product. I think really soon in the next few months will be something that feels a lot more like signing up for a Google Workspace. So it's really good for personal use if you just need Gmail, Drive, and Docs or something. And it's also good for custom domain for your organization and 5, 10, 20, 30 people that you want to onboard. And so then basically you're competing head to head with those other products that I mentioned, and just need to deliver, I think, first of all, a really, really good product. And then more than that, something that delivers on that privacy value proposition.
And consistent design elements too, unlike the latest release of Gmail. I don't know if you've seen the all the Twitter
Definitely.
stuff on the different shades of blue, but just
definitely, yeah,
stuff.
it's funny that's been making the rounds.
Yeah. I reverted back to the old design on Gmail.
Really? I didn't know that was an option. I'll have to check that out.
It is, yeah. Not to knock Gmail. I'm a daily user of Gmail, but it's funny.
I mean, the thing I'm more impressed with, just as a note, is we've basically gone from, let's say tens to hundreds of emails being received by Skiff every day. We're at, let's say, like 10, 20, 30, 40,000 at this point. So, that scaling has been something to reckon with. I can only imagine going to billions of emails received every day. So that must be, I don't know, that is something that I'm impressed with, and I'll give them credit on the things that maybe no one talks about.
Of course. So a question from Christopher. Will there be KYC or something similar for IPFS/encrypted mail services in the same way there is for bank accounts to thwart terrorism, child exploitation activities, probably, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess I'll separate it into two parts. One is why, yes or no, we would consider KYC, and the other is maybe more of the kind of product abuse questions, or basically keeping, the product safety questions. So I think we have no need for KYC. If anything, I think it's super, super cool that you can sign up for Skiff with a crypto wallet and get this whole new kind of unprecedentedly private and anonymous way to collaborate. That's something that I think rarely exists today, and is just like generally against most companies' philosophies and growth practices. Like, most companies don't want to let you sign up. They want your phone number and your email and your full name and all this other stuff. So then you can use like an Airtable or another product and populate everyone's work history and just, basically do whatever you can to be a little privacy invasive. So that, I think, we don't want to change. I think on the trust and safety questions, those are important, because when, what comes with anonymity sometimes is just basically people doing things that aren't always great for the product or the platform. And so, yeah, there are some things around distributing like DMCA content, or, content and images that just shouldn't be displayed or shared. And so basically we think about that a lot and work with some of the best people in the industry, Alex Stamos, like the legal team that works with Apple, and all these other people who help us just come up with really good policies and also really good technical things we can do to prevent that. So, for example, like limiting the size of files sent or shared on Skiff or Skiff Drive. If people are sending spam emails, just letting people report that when they're receiving them, and then also maybe having that reflected in, the number of emails people can send. And so we've already kind of dealt with some of those issues where people are trying to send spam. But yeah, I think a lot of what you do in a more privacy-centric world is just rely on users and more kind of a distributed trust model, where people are reporting, they're taking the initiative and either sending reports to us or doing things like directly in kind of their own technical domain that can prevent that, like blocking someone else. So yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of those concepts evolve. IPFS, WhatsApp, Signal, they're all building platforms for these too. But yeah, that's something big that we're working on.
Yeah, it's such an important issue. And it really raises the question of, is it the platform's job to monitor these types of things and to intervene if there's certain activity that's being conducted on the platform? It's a really hard question. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? If there's, say tomorrow, there's a massive gang or drug trafficking activity organization that's happening on Skiff, is that something you can prevent? Is that something that you would prevent? How have you thought about that as an organization?
Yeah, I guess I'll separate like maybe moral and legal risks here. So there are certain times where there are legal things you have to do, like, if someone has a link to DMCA content and you're going to get some sort of notice to remove that, you have to do something. And so you like basically, make sure that a link isn't accessible, or you do something small like that. That's something that just like all organizations have to deal with, or you're risking like, it's an existential business risk. I think on the moral side, generally we are really pro kind of free speech and anti-intervention. And so I'm just going to kind of rule out the criminal example because I think that is a legal thing where we consult with lawyers and see what's possible. But generally, I think we do not want to be like, we're really pro free speech, free communication, and collaboration around the world. And I think where you see private browsers, search engines, and communication apps really kind of sink themselves is by coming up with policies that are, messing with that. And I think I'm really against that in general. But more than that, I just think hopefully a lot of what we've invested in on the technical side of using wallets, of using end-to-end encryption, of using decentralized storage really backs that up in general as an organization. So I think we don't want to be an arbiter of free speech, free communication. I think that is a much more fundamental right. And I also think it's exciting to see that built into Signal, built into WhatsApp and other ways people are communicating. And we want to make that an absolute. And so I think like that thing I'm mentioning of seeing other products and, companies choose to censor or take things down, I think we will generally kind of fight tooth and nail to not get pushed in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that distinction you make between legal and moral matters. And I guess the point being that, it in the future, it won't just be kind of some free for all on Skiff. Like there are rules and regulations and laws that you have to abide by as a platform for the sake of keeping your business alive and around. And so there will be methods in which to prohibit illegal activity from being conducted using Skiff's platform.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, we have no way of accessing anything that you write, collaborate, or share. So none of your emails, we can't read them, your documents, your files. That will remain true forever. And I think, in the past, there have been questions of, is the government going to ban end-to-end encryption? I actually think we're beyond that. I think there's enough money, users, time, spent basically where I don't see that as a risk. I think the more nuanced arguments are like, how are people going to deal with these, reporting requirements, or how are big companies going to deal with, changing their business models around privacy? So I don't think we'll ever, flex that end-to-end encryption like fundamental belief. We don't want to have any sort of insight or say over what you're doing or you're sharing. But I think we're going to see like privacy legislation evolve a lot. We'll see where big companies take their privacy products. We'll see where Apple's end-to-end encryption efforts go, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So today, in switching gears to kind of crypto specifically, a lot of activity is being done with the wallet as sort of that key interface with specific applications or with other people, right? You interact, there's wallet to wallet, transfer of value, there's wallet to wallet, there's wallet sign in on dApps. And it sounds like with Skiff, there's wallet sign in as well. Is that something, do you have a view on where the world is kind of going as it relates to the wallet as kind of a key identifier or maybe a key method of interacting with the outside world? Is that something you think about at Skiff?
Yeah, I guess yes and no. I think the way we think about it is we have this fundamental problem, which is we need to build a private end-to-end encrypted product that protects people's privacy. And from there, what are the best technical solutions we can do that, one, are really just like simple, like they accomplish that core technical goal, and they also reach a lot of people. And so wallets, to be honest, are one of the best things that we can do in that regard. And the thinking behind that is like wallets, have 50 to 100 million monthly active users at this point. They've exploded in popularity in the last year, and they get a private key into every person's hands. And that's just a problem that's existed for like decades that no one has really figured out. Like PGP email, like I said, didn't really work. Like who wants to be finding some whole server for their keys, like all this other stuff. And now we have these amazing ways of giving private keys to people all around the world in a really kind of efficient, anonymous and mathematical way. So I think that's been fantastic. And that is, I think, our core belief, which is we have this problem. We think, lots more people in the world need or should have private keys. Wallets are one of the most accessible and easy ways of delivering that to people. And then, how can we basically leverage that inside Skiff?
Yeah.
Does that answer the question? What do you think?
No, I think it does. and it's fascinating because, you know, maybe 5-10 years ago, if you had said like people, you know, I would never have trusted that people would be willing to deal with private keys or like mess with them at all. And from a user experience perspective, it's definitely much harder than just having, say, you know, a username and password that you could
Yeah.
just back up, and you know, you can always reset your password if you want. Whereas if you lose your private keys, it's, you know, what's
Yeah.
done is done. And but now we're in this world where it's become the norm. And I guess it's one of those things where,
Yeah.
you know, you should just never underestimate the end user and their ability to grasp new concepts in order to participate in ecosystems that they want to participate in.
Yeah. That you're bringing up one of the toughest questions, which is, you know, like self custody, the dangers, the pros. Like, are people
Yeah.
going to lose their money? Or are they going to lose their accounts? I think that I agree. Honestly, difficult, something new for consumers to grasp, and I'll say still unsolved. Like, I don't think we have the best solutions there. But I think a ton of super smart and really aligned parties are working on that really, really hard. From the Brave team to the MetaMask team to Jack Dorsey and the Block crypto team published a really long blog post on this yesterday about how they have this whole view of basically like some paper backup shares versus hardware wallets, and how they're thinking about recovery and all the blockchain products they're building. So I think there's a really great group of people solving this. I don't think we're there quite yet. But yeah, that's definitely ongoing.
That's awesome. I'm actually looking for that Jack Dorsey blog post. That sounds fascinating and something to read as homework.
Yeah, it was I think a retweet from yesterday from
Okay.
another Block crypto team.
Okay. I'll have to find it. I can't find it right now.
Cool. I'll take a
Um,
look for it too.
yeah. But yeah, it is interesting. It's actually a really fascinating design space, just private key management. And you're absolutely right. I don't think there's anyone who I think it's still unsolved, but there are teams kind of working on, you know, things like key recovery if you lose them. And there are these alternative solutions that are popping up just in a way to make private key management more user friendly. And so I'm excited for
Yeah,
actually where that future leads to. Because I think that's one
totally
of the
agree.
things as we think about expanding like the market size of crypto and the TAM. I think that's one of the things that's really critical to probably more widespread
Definitely.
adoption. Though who knows?
Definitely.
I mean, people are smart, you know, and kids these days are tech native and cryptography native. So who knows what the future
Totally agree.
holds? So we'll see.
Totally agree. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's also cool that there's so much being done on just like the trust problems too, which I think are also somewhat related to those private key problems. Like, how can you make it harder for people's wallets to get drained, or just
Mm,
um, I don't know, connecting to the wrong
yeah.
dApps and all those sorts of things.
Yeah, all those little like, and really there just needs to be some work done on the little like UX defaults and UI defaults and some enhanced data maybe around like connecting your wallet to a dApp to ensure that it's the right dApp and it's not going to drain your wallet and that type of thing, and make phishing and these other types of scams just harder to do.
Yeah,
So I'm excited for that future as well.
agreed. Yeah, I don't know. Uh, Go ahead. Go ahead. It sounds like
No,
you're.
no, I was just gonna say like, so kind of like coming back to Skiff. So, you know, where are you today? So I think you have 3 products that are live in the productivity suite. What are those 3
Yep.
products? And then maybe what's kind of coming on the roadmap in the next, you know, 6 months, 12
Yeah.
months, 18 months?
Yeah. Wow. It's a long time.
Yeah,
So
I
you're right.
know.
We have.
We can do weeks. We can do weeks instead.
Well, yeah, I could do a definitely more accurate picture, but we have a mail product as our biggest. So Skiff Mail was launched about 8-10 weeks ago, and it's private end-to-end encrypted, wallet compatible email. So I'd say that's kind of our biggest, most important product. From there, we have our Skiff Drive product,
And
end-to-end
does Skiff
encrypted.
Mail, and sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
does Skiff Mail work? So it works both with other users of Skiff Mail, but then other users of say Gmail or whatever, Outlook, etc.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's totally interoperable. The one note is that if you're sending to a Gmail or an Outlook, we basically can't tell you what they're going to do with the data you send to them.
Right.
So, every Skiff to Skiff mail is end-to-end encrypted. If you send mail externally, Skiff also does not keep an unencrypted copy. So we don't, you send from Skiff to Gmail, we don't want an unencrypted copy of that email. But at some point, it's in Gmail's hands, and Gmail will do whatever they do. So yeah,
Right.
we've got the mail product. Go ahead.
So that the most security is with Skiff to Skiff communication.
Yeah, we can give you kind of the strongest assurances about that. Or honestly, just using our Pages or Drive product, where you can share a link or share a folder. And so that's kind of totally on platform too, and everything remains completely private.
And those are product 2 and 3. And sorry, I keep cutting you off.
Yeah, exactly. So no, it's they're simple to explain. So it's what we call Drive and Pages. Drive, I'm sure everyone will understand. It's Drive, Dropbox, file storage and sharing product, and then Pages is a lot like Docs, but in a bit more of a kind of new collaborative world, where it's like a single page design. We've got all the nice things around tables and slash commands and that sort of stuff. So looking at
I'm a Notion user, and it looks a little more like Notion, which is great.
No, I think Notion's obviously a fantastic, such a smooth and great product. And many of the concepts that are built into that on blocks and slash commands, and they represent many years of evolving productivity, from I think Slack maybe introducing slash commands, to Quip introducing some of these in-page tables, to just like basically all these interplay of Coda introducing all these integrations. So I think we're trying to see where that space goes.
I'm curious, are you like a productivity tool maxi? Like, are you one of these people who has all their setups and these different kind of apps that they use? Or
categorically, no, I am not.
Okay.
I like taking notes, and I use, I would say, like Apple Notes and Skiff interchangeably. That's it. I don't, part of the reason why I've never really gotten so into doing those sorts of setups is just that I feel like they change every 2 years or something. And so, I just feel like you got to build something that stands the test of time. And it's tough to just build a whole new, I don't know, like workflow for myself every year and a half. What about you?
I don't know. I use Notion. So I feel like that there's a class of people that use Notion, I feel like.
Definitely.
And, but traditionally, no, I don't have like my whole productivity suite completely nailed down. And unfortunately, I've been victim of just changing from, Apple Notes to Google Drive to Notion to all these different things. So I've felt the pain firsthand.
Yeah.
So with Skiff, is it all desktop, or are there mobile apps as well?
So we now support 4 mobile apps.
Awesome.
iPhone and Android apps for Pages/Drive, and then for Mail.
Awesome. So mobile friendly as well.
And there is a Mac desktop app that is a little earlier in its beta stages.
Great. And so looking ahead, we don't necessarily have to do 18 months, but what's coming maybe, rest of year, and maybe what's the next kind of big thing that you guys are focused on?
So I think we're not in the mode of launching entirely new products immediately. We've taken that on many times already. Yeah. What we're really looking at as a top priority is just making our products really good, really reliable, really easy to use, and really integrated. So, you're onboarding onto Skiff as an entire workspace. They're integrated in the notifications and the sharing and the collaboration you can do. So, sending notifications about Pages to your Skiff mail, getting richer and kind of, deeper integrations between Mail and attachments and Drive, all these things that'll just make it much better and simpler to use our products as a whole. And so I think there's a lot to do there. They're all super early, like under, let's say, 10 months old, and they have a long way to go to evolve. So that's the first priority. And then from there, you'll start to see that reflected at the workspace and account level. So you'll see stuff like custom domains being launched for email really soon. Like that's our kind of top priority. But that also reflects, how you're going to bring other people on board in, a custom domain or your workspace, and then also want them to be able to use multiple products. So those are the main things we're working on.
That's awesome. Super exciting stuff coming down the pipe.
Definitely a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, so as we're kind of coming to the end here, this has been a really awesome conversation. I would just ask you, Andrew, is there anything maybe that we haven't covered that would be interesting for you to mention or to talk about? And if not, no worries. I think this has been an awesome conversation and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I don't know. You had such awesome questions, and obviously, I think between you and the audience, a lot of familiarity with what's going on. I definitely don't have too much to add. I would say please, try Skiff and send us feedback. Definitely curious about all perspectives on the future of productivity and collaboration, the future of mail, and just anything people are seeing on the technical side with wallets, decentralized storage, or just privacy. That would be really cool. One last note, we actually do a ton of collaborations on the product side. So, we've worked with the MetaMask team a lot, the Brave Wallet team, the Phantom team, really person to person and directly. It's not just like, we'll slap something into the product. So if there's anyone, or people know, or suggestions for more things we can do to make Skiff better, we're really, really open to that.
Awesome. Yeah. And I just dropped the link to skiff.com wherever everyone can go and sign up. And there's a free version, right, for personal use.
Yeah, there's quite a generous free plan.
Awesome. Yeah. So you can sign up for free there and then follow Andrew on Twitter and follow Skiff Privacy on Twitter. And I think with that, Andrew, thanks so much. This has been an awesome conversation. I'm really excited with just the content that we've got to cover so far. And we'll be in touch. And thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Yeah, super great stuff.
All right. Thank you, Greg. Thanks so much. Take it easy.